Or the scholars add, based on ihtiyat wajib, that it should not be made from animals who are not permissible to consume. And here it makes no difference whether those parts come from those parts of the body we say they have ruh in it. For example, the skin has ruh in it. Or they come from those parts of the body which don't have ruh in it. For example, fur and hair and nails. It also does not make a difference whether a person is wearing it or it is on them, meaning on their clothes or on their body. Okay? Now, this raises a very significant concern for people who keep pets at home, and especially those who keep cats at home. And you know that those who have cats at home, the cats are going to leave their fur, their hair all over the place. It's almost impossible to avoid having cat hair on your body or having cat hair on your clothes. And the mas'ala is that if those hair are on your body or they are on your clothes, then your salat is batil. Okay? Now, most of the maraji of taqleed are of the opinion that yes, if you have hair, then your salat is batil. However, Ayatollah Sistani has a slightly different fatwa on this issue. And I'm going to read the fatwa for you in Farsi and translate it into English. And Sayyid Sistani says, "Vali agar muye hayvan haram gosht." However, if the hair of an animal who is not permissible to consume, like a cat, bisyar kam va nachiz bashad, is very little or insignificant. It's not a lot. Okay? Masalan, then he gives an example. Because sometimes we think, okay, one strand of hair is okay. But more than one strand will make the salat batil. He says, masalan yek, ya do, ya se. If it's one or two or three, yeah, up to that much. Muye kuchike hayvan, bar libas namaz guzar bashad, the small hair of an animal are on the clothes of the one who is saying salat, ishkal nadarad. There is no problem in it. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Today we're celebrating the birth of Lady Zainab alayha salam. And Lady Zainab is a very important personality in our history. She is an example in many areas of life. Lady Zainab alayha salam is an example in her worship. She is an example in her knowledge. She is an example in her knowledge of the Quran. She is an example for us in her character and her patience. But she's also an example for us in how she broke down the propaganda and the media of the time. Okay? One of the strongest controls of the media was the control of the Umayyad regime. They had a complete dictatorship over the media. They had a complete control over the thoughts of the people. And this started long before the time of Yazid. This started during the time of Muawiyah. The Imams of Jum'ah were appointed by Muawiyah. Every media outlet that you could think of was controlled by the Umayyad regime. The Imams for the Friday prayers were appointed by them. And they formalized the cursing of the Ahlul Bayt in the Friday prayer. Every Friday prayer, somebody would go for salat and they would hear disparaging remarks about the Ahlul Bayt. The poets were also controlled by them. And they had poets everywhere that would compose poetry in the praise of the Umayyads and compose poetry in disparaging the Ahlul Bayt. Many of the scholars were controlled by them. And they had scholars who would compose hadith. They had scholars who would compose hadith in praise of the Umayyad and disparaging the Ahlul Bayt. One of the scholars was known to be a Sahabi, a famous one. When he composed a hadith, composed it, in disparaging the Ahlul Bayt, Muawiyah gave the governorship of Medina to him. The control over the media was so complete that we are told when Amir al-Mu'mineen was martyred in the masjid in Kufa, and news of this martyrdom reached the people of Sham, the question that they had in their mind was not why somebody assassinated Amir al-Mu'mineen. The question they had in their mind is what was Amir al-Mu'mineen doing in the masjid? What was Ali doing in the masjid? For we have heard that Ali did not used to pray. Zainab alayha salam goes in that environment. She goes in the lion's den, if we can say that. And with her speeches, being alone, not having, for example, as we say, like a system with her, she unraveled their narratives. She unraveled their messages. She unraveled all of the ideas that the Umayyads had built into the mind of the people in Sham, to the extent that Yazid immediately asks them to leave Sham because he is afraid that she will create a revolution. So today we want to continue our discussion on the media. And last week, if you remember, we spoke about the power of words. And today we want to speak about the credibility of the media, the credibility of those who are reporting the news, and why it's important for me and you to first determine their credibility before we listen to any news that comes from them. And what does it mean for them to have credibility? On these issues, as Muslims, we cannot be naive. We cannot assume that what we're hearing is always the truth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Hujarat, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O those who believe, in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu. When a fasiq, when a corrupt person comes to you with a naba means news. When a corrupt person comes to you with a piece of news, fatabayyanu. Some of you are students of the Arabic language. And in Arabic, there's a difference between fa and thumma. When something is going to happen after a period of time, in Arabic you say thumma. But when something is supposed to happen immediately, there shouldn't be a lot of time between these two things. In Arabic you use fa. You should not make judgment. You should not make a decision. You should not act according to that news until you have investigated. Why? فَتُصْبِحُوا عَلَى مَا فَعَلْتُمْ نَادِبِينَ. Now, there is a cause of revelation for this verse. And I want to begin with the cause of revelation. The tribes were entering into the folds of Islam. And as they were entering into the folds of Islam, the Prophet of Allah would send muballighin towards them. And he would also send some of his companions to go and collect zakat from them. So the Prophet of Allah sent Walid ibn Utbah, right? Walid ibn Aqaba, afwan. Walid ibn Aqaba to the tribe of Bani Mustalaq. Now, prior to Islam, there was animosity between the tribe of Walid ibn Aqaba and the tribe of Bani Mustalaq. There was enmity between these two tribes. They had fought wars between these two tribes. So when Walid ibn Aqaba goes towards this tribe, and they realize that the representative of the Holy Prophet is coming towards us, they decided they're all going to come out of their homes. And they're going to all welcome him into their town. Now when Walid ibn Aqaba comes towards the town, he sees a whole group of people, a large group of people coming out of their homes, coming in big numbers, maybe they are running towards him, and in his mind, he starts to make assumptions. He says, we used to have animosity. They are coming to kill me. So he immediately leaves that place. He goes back to the Holy Prophet and says, Ya Rasulullah, these people have left the folds of Islam. They refuse to give sadaqah. They refuse to give their zakat, afwan. And not only that, but they wanted to kill your representative. Now, whenever a tribe refused to give zakat, it meant that you are no longer giving bay'ah to the Holy Prophet. It means that you are now going to take up potentially arms against the Holy Prophet. So the Prophet of Allah prepared the Muslimin to go and face them. And that's when this verse of the Quran was revealed. إِن جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ. When a corrupt person comes to you with a piece of news, فَتَبَيَّنُوا. Your first duty is not to act according to it. Your first duty is not to pass judgment according to it. Your first duty is to do tabayyun. Tabayyun means to investigate. Why? أَن تُصِيبُ قَوْمًا بِجَهَالَةٍ. Lest you come to harm a group of people out of ignorance. فَتُصْبِحُ عَلَى مَا فَعَلْتُمْ نَادِمِينَ. And then you come to regret what you have done. Investigating after taking action is too late. You have to investigate before you take action. Okay? Now we bring this to our conversation on media literacy. And I want to emphasize tonight over and over again that we cannot be naive as a Muslim community. We know that certain media outlets are corrupt. They have a certain bias. They have a certain agenda. We all, for example, know Fox News has a certain bias. We know that the National Post has a certain bias. We know the Toronto Sun has a certain bias and a certain agenda. Okay? But you find that certain media outlets, we don't ask the same questions about them. Some of these media outlets have become household names even in the Muslim community. For example, BBC has become a household name. It's not uncommon in the Muslim community for a Muslim to say, even the BBC has reported it. Meaning if the BBC has reported it, it is wahy munzal, it's divine revelation. You know? Or for example, CNN has become a household name. And we say not just Fox News, but now CNN is also reporting this. And we need to start asking ourselves questions. So who's the owner of this media outlet? Who's the CEO of this media outlet? Who is funding this media outlet? Who are the journalists who are working within this media outlet? You know, last week I told you that over 100 staff at the BBC wrote a letter of dissent about how the BBC is covering what's happening in Gaza. Back in February, over 100 staff at CNN had already written that letter for CNN. The CNN was very biased in its coverage. The CNN, for example, never questioned anything that was being reported by the Zionist authorities. Right? That in fact, CNN, before it publishes anything, I don't know if you know, it has to be sent to its Tel Aviv or Jerusalem bureau. And only when the censor over there okays that piece of news or report to be released, then CNN releases it. But the question that they weren't asking is, so who's the owner of CNN? And why do we see this bias in CNN? It turns out that the owner of the parent company, the CEO of the parent company of CNN, is a man by the name of David Zaslav. A person who is openly a Zionist, a person who justifies the massacre of Palestinians for the purpose of furthering Zionist agenda. Say, what do you expect to come out of CNN? Just because they did one good piece on Muslims living in America, Now we are supposed to accept everything that comes from CNN? As Muslims, we cannot be naive. Especially when it comes to politics, we have to be discerning. Okay? One of the values of Islam is husnul dhan. It means to have a positive opinion. And a Muslim is somebody who is generally supposed to have a positive opinion of people. Masalan, when we come to the center, we should have a positive opinion of one another. Somebody didn't say salam to me, let me not have a negative opinion. In the family especially, we need to have a positive opinion. One of the ways that shaitan creates conflict inside the family is through su'u dhan, through having a negative opinion of one another. Okay? But we are told in hadith that there are exceptions to husnul dhan. There is exception to having a good opinion. And that depends on the environment in which you live. Okay? You have to look at the society in which you are living. For example, in certain places, in even the lands of the Muslimin, when it comes to their business dealings, it's now become very common for people to lie, for people to cheat, for people to deceive. If somebody, for example, tells you something about their product, you almost have to begin by assuming that he's lying. That's the reality. The hadith is you don't have to be naive in those environments. Don't go around saying, I'm going to have husnul dhan. If you go around having husnul dhan, you're deceiving yourself. Okay, let's come to the hadith now. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala. He says, إِذَا اسْتَوْلَ الصَّلَاحُ عَلَى الزَّمَانِ وَأَهْلِهِ. When righteousness overcomes or spreads in a certain time and the people of that time, ثُمَّ أَسَاءَ رَجُلٌ الظَّنَّ بِرَجُلٍ. And then a person has a negative opinion of another person. لَمْ تَظْهُرْ مِنْهُ حَوْبَةٌ. And he hasn't seen anything wrong in that person. He hasn't seen him doing something wrong. فَقَدْ ظَلَمْ. He has done an act of oppression, of dhulm on that person. Okay? Now the second part of the hadith. The second part of the hadith says, وَإِذَا اسْتَوْلَى الْفَسَادُ عَلَى الزَّمَانِ. And when corruption becomes prevalent in a society, وَأَهْلِهِ. And the people of that society, فَأَحْسَنَ رَجُلٌ الظَّنَّ بِرَجُلٍ. And then a man has a good opinion of another man, فَقَدْ غُرِّرَ. Then he has been deceived. When it comes to the media, we have to be very careful. We cannot just give them a pass. We cannot just assume that they are credible. Just because they published one good article does not mean that now I'm going to accept all the articles that come from them. Right? Just because they have one Muslim in their channel does not mean now the whole channel has become halal, has become tayyib. Right? I think this is where we need to mature as a Muslim community. We had a thinking that was 20 years ago, and we need a different type of thinking today. 20 years ago, we wanted to see one of our own, we said, in the news. So if we saw a news anchor that was a Muslim or a Muslimah, we saw a journalist that was a Muslim or a Muslimah, then we were quite happy with that. Right? And we said that, okay, alhamdulillah, this news channel, they're doing something right. They've decided to employ a Muslim or a Muslimah. They've decided to employ one of us. Today, that approach is not going to work. We have to be more discerning. Right? We have to understand that there are so many political streams. There are so many political movements. There are so many political philosophies out there. Just because a person is a Muslim does not mean that they have the right political vision. Does not mean that they have the right political philosophy. Didn't we see south of the border? There are Muslim analysts. Day and night, they are promoting the people who carried out genocide for the last year. And they were saying, vote for them. Say, Baba, they carried out genocide against your brothers and sisters. And you're still telling us to vote for them. So as Muslims, we need to be more discerning than that. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when a fasiq comes to you with a piece of news, فَتَبَيَّنُوا, then do tabayyun. Tabayyun means to investigate. Now, at first, it means to investigate that piece of news. Did it actually happen? Or it didn't happen? Right? Is it real news? Or is it fake news? Sometimes the media does report news that is not true, that is fake. I remember when I was studying in Qom, and one day I came out of my hawza, and I saw this small protest happening outside. It was so small, I ignored it. In my mind, I thought to myself, like, look at how disorganized they are, you know? And nobody was bothering them. They did whatever they wanted to do. The same day, I went home 2 hours later, and I opened up BBC News. And BBC News reported it this way. Tens of thousands of people had gathered in Qom to protest against this and that. I said, Baba, I was there. I didn't see tens of thousands of people. What I saw was something that I said, oh, like, what are they doing, these people? Okay. So the media has a tendency sometimes to exaggerate what was not there. The media has a tendency sometimes to report things which are not real. You know? And I'm not just talking about what's happening in West Asia, in the Middle East. What's happening in Ukraine? Consistently, they have misreported what's happening there. What's happening in China? And why we should be afraid of China. We have to be more discerning. There's an agenda behind it. Okay? All right. But one thing I've tried to emphasize over is that our biggest concern is not that they are misrepresenting the news. Our biggest concern is that they are misrepresenting the narrative. The narrative is more important than the news. Misinformation today does not happen with fake news. Yes, there is fake news. There's no doubt there is fake news. But the emphasis that I see on fake news, I think is distracting us. Yes, it is true. They're using AI, they're using artificial intelligence to make photos which are not real, to make audio which is not real. Now they're making video clips which are not real. They are generated by AI. But let me tell you, that's not how the media influences our thoughts. It's by misrepresenting the narrative, not giving you the real context, not telling you why things are happening. Not telling you, for example, why things are happening in Ukraine the way they are happening in Ukraine. Okay. I'll give you an example and we'll end with that today. Is a piece of news that some of you would have been following yesterday and today. Okay. As many of you know that there's an incident that has transpired in Amsterdam. Okay. And since yesterday and this morning especially, the media has been reporting it every hour. And they are reporting it in a particular manner. And they have videos to show that this is what's happening in Amsterdam. But then it's not just reporting that, but also saying now what needs to happen about this. Okay? Why this is happening. For example, they're reporting that it's happening because of their religion. Those people are being victimized because of their ethnicity. Yes? And it's very dangerous the way they're reporting it. Because the white supremacists in the Netherlands are picking up on it. And now they're talking about how the immigrants have come and spoiled our country, how the immigrants have come and change the culture in our country, and here is proof of that. Now, what is it that the media is not telling you? Okay. So it's not giving you the context. It's giving you the news. It's showing you the videos. But it's not giving you the full picture and the full context of what is happening over there. That context is more important. Right? So we know that these soccer fans from this particular soccer club, they came to the Netherlands, right? And from the night before, they started to attack all the houses, many of the houses that kept Palestinian flags. They attacked them with stones. They tried to pull down the flags. There were taxi drivers who tried to stop them from doing what they were doing. Those taxi drivers were attacked by these fans. Okay? But then as they were going towards the game, they started to chant certain slogans. It's amazing how the media doesn't report this. Right? Some of the slogans I cannot even say it right now. But one of the slogans I will mention to you. Okay? You know, we'll come to that. One of the slogans that they said, and that was reported over there, is that, why is school out in Gaza? The next part of it is so difficult to say. If I could get away by not saying it, I would have preferred not to say it. The level of lowliness, the level of depravity, moral depravity, is unbelievable. Okay? Here's the slogan that they repeated over and over and over again, outside the stadium, inside the stadium, in the neighborhoods of the Muslimin. Why is school out in Gaza? There are no children left there. But does the media report that for you? It doesn't give you that context, right? And then it spins whatever narrative it wants to spin. That this is happening because of their religion, this is happening because of their ethnicity, this is happening because those people are immigrants, this is happening because those people are Arabs, those who are carrying this out, it's happening because they are Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, فَتَبَيَّنُوا, investigate. Here, investigate does not just mean investigate the news. Here, investigate more importantly means investigate the narrative and the context and the story that is being sold to you. أَن تُصِيبُوا قَوْمًا بِجَهَالَةٍ فَتُصْبِحُوا عَلَى مَا فَعَلْتُمْ نَادِمِينَ. Lest you end up harming a community out of ignorance, and then you are regretful for what you have done. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We'll look at any questions that you may have on the Mentimeter before we recite the dua. Okay. We'll recite dua number 49 of the Sahifa. The dua is being displayed on the screen. You can also find it online as well. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. إلهنا هديتنا فلهونا ووعظت فقسونا وأبليت الجميل فعصينا ثم عرفنا ما أصدرت إذ عرفتنا فاستغفرنا فأقلت، فعدنا فسترت، فلك إلهنا الحمد. تقحمنا أودية الهلاك، وحللنا شعاب تلا، تعرضنا فيها لسطواتك، وبحلولها عقوباتك. ووسيلتنا إليك التوحيد، وذريعتنا أنا لم نشرك بك شيئا، ولم نتخذ معك إلها، وقد فررنا إليك بأنفسنا، وإليك مفر المسيء ومفزع المضيع لحظ نفسه الملتجئ. فكم من عدو تضى علينا سيف عداوته، وشحذ لنا ضبة مديته، وأرهف لنا شبا حده، وداف لنا قواتل سموم، وسدد نحونا صوائب سهام، ولم تنم عنا عين حراسته، وأضمر أن يسومنا المكروه، ويجر عنا زعاف مرارته. فنظرت يا إلهنا إلى ضعفنا عن احتمال الفوادح، وعجزنا عن الانتصار ممن قصدنا بمحاربته، ووحدتنا في كثير عدد من ناوانا، وأرسد لنا بالبلاء فيما لم نعمل فيه فكرنا. فابتدأتنا بنصرك، وشددت أزرنا بقوتك، ثم فللت الدم وسيرته من بعد جمع عديد وحده، وأعليت كعبنا عليه، وجعلت ما سدده مردودا عليه، فرددته لم يشفي غيظا، ولم يسكن غليل، قد عض على شواه، وأدبر موليا قد أخلفت سرايا. وكم من باغ بغانا بمكائد، ونصب لنا شرك مصائد، ووكل بنا تفقد رعاية، وأضبأ إلينا إضباء السبع لطريدة، انتظار الانتهاز الفرصة لفريسة، وهو يظهر لنا بشاشة الملق، وينظرنا على شدة الحنق. فلما رأيت يا إلهنا تباركت وتعاليت دخل سريرته، وقبح من طوى عليه أركسته لأم رأسه في زبيته، ورددته في مهوى حفرته، فانقمع بعد استطالته ذليلا في ربق حبالته، التي كان يقدر أن يرانا فيها، وقد كاد أن يحل بنا لولا رحمتك ما حل بساحته. وكم من حاسد قد شرق بنا بغصته، وشجي منا بغيظه، وسلقنا بحد لسانه، ووحرنا بقرف عيوبه، وجعل عرضنا عرضا لمراميه، وقلدنا خلالا لم تزل فيه، ووحرنا بكيد، وقصدنا بمكيدة. فناديناك يا إلهنا مستغيثين بك، واثقين بسرعة إجابتك، عالمين أنه لا يضطهد من آوى إلى ظل كنفه، ولا يفزع من لجأ إلى معقل انتصاره. فحصنتنا من بأسه بقدرتك. وكم من سحائب مكروه جليتها عنا، وسحائب نعم أمطرتها علينا، وجداول رحمة نشرتها، وعافية ألبستها، وأعين أحداث طمستها، وغواشي كربات كشفتها. وكم من ظن حسن حققتا، وعدم جبرتا، وسرعة أنعشتا، ومسكنة حولتا، كل ذلك إنعاما وتطولا منك. وفي جميعه انهماكا منا على معاصيك، لم تمنعك إساءتنا عن إتمام إحسانك، ولا حجرنا ذلك عن ارتكاب مساخطك. لا تسأل عما تفعل، ولقد سئلت فأعطيت، ولم تسأل فابتدأت، واستميح فضلك فما أكديت. أبيت يا مولاي إلا إحسانا وامتنانا، وتطولا وإنعاما، وأبينا إلا تقحما لحرماتك، وتعديا لحدودك، وغفلة عن وعيدك. فلك الحمد إلهنا من مقتدر لا يغلب، وذي أنات. هذا مقام من اعترف بسبوغ النعم، وقابلها بالتقصير، وشهد على نفسه بالتضييع. اللهم فإنا نتقرب إليك بالمحمدية الرفيعة والعلوية البيضاء، ونتوجه إليك بهما تعيذنا والمسلمين من شر أعدائنا المستكبرين الظالمين، فإن ذلك لا يضيق عليك في وجدك، ولا يتكأدك في قدرتك، وأنت على كل شيء قدير. فهب لنا يا إلهنا من رحمتك ودوام توفيقك ما نتخذه سلما نعرج به إلى رضوانك، ونأمن به من عقابك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على. Request you to recite a Surah Fatiha, first for those who are sick and seeking shifa, for those who are injured and seeking recovery, and for all of our marhumin. In particular, this evening, we remember the marhum mother of our dear brother Jamshid, and also for the shuhada of Islam, the shuhada on the path of Quds, and the shaheed that we lost. May Allah shower them with His rahmah and His maghfirah, and elevate their status in the hereafter with a barakah of reciting Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Let's rise for ziyarah.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى.